David stood his ground, adjusting the strap of his carry-on bag over his shoulder as he faced the woman with a composed expression. Her eyes darted between David and his boarding pass, disbelief etching her features. "A soldier like you in first class? Surely you're mistaken," she said, her voice laced with condescension. David smiled faintly, not out of amusement, but as an attempt to maintain civility under her scrutinizing gaze. "Ma'am, the airline upgraded me as a gesture of appreciation for my service. Please check your ticket." "Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding," he suggested politely. The woman, however, shook her head dismissively, clutching her designer bag closer to her side as if to emphasize a point about her own status. "I booked this seat months ago. There's no way they just give it away to anyone," she retorted, her voice loud enough that a few heads turned in their direction. An elderly couple in the adjacent row whispered among themselves, casting sympathetic glances toward David. The gentleman leaned over slightly, offering a supportive nod. "Son, thank you for your service," he murmured, his words carrying a weight of sincerity that contrasted sharply with the woman's harsh demeanor. Encouraged by this show of support, David responded more firmly. "I assure you, ma'am, there is no error. I'm entitled to sit here just as much as anyone else." The tension seemed to ripple through the first-class cabin as more passengers took notice, the atmosphere charged with a mix of discomfort and anticipation for resolution. The flight attendant, sensing the brewing conflict, approached with a bright smile. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, her tone professional yet warm, her eyes quickly assessing the situation. David handed his boarding pass to the flight attendant with a respectful nod. "I believe there's been some confusion about seating," he explained, his voice steady despite the rising pressure. The flight attendant examined the pass, then addressed the woman with a firmness that belied her friendly demeanor. "Ma'am, this gentleman is in the correct seat. I need you to take your seat as well so we can prepare for takeoff." As the woman reluctantly moved away, murmurs of approval echoed softly around them, the majority of passengers clearly on David's side. David settled into his seat, the soft hum of the aircraft's engines a steady backdrop to his tumultuous emotions. The confrontation had left him with a lingering sense of discomfort, but as a soldier, he was trained to handle far more than verbal altercations. He pulled out the small writing pad he always carried, a habit from years of needing to jot down thoughts and orders. His handwriting was steady as he began to compose a message to the woman, each word chosen to bridge the gap of misunderstanding that had arisen between them. Seated across the aisle, an observant young mother watched to do it right. She whispered to her daughter, "See, that's how you handle problems. With patience." Her daughter, who had been staring wide-eyed at the scene earlier, nodded, taking in the lesson. David wrote about his childhood in a diverse neighborhood, his decision to join the military, and how it had taught him about respect, unity, and diversity. He wrote about the places he had seen and the people he had met, all different, yet all striving for similar things: peace, respect, and a better life for their families. He ended the note with a simple request for understanding and mutual respect. He folded the note neatly and handed it to a passing flight attendant with a small request. "Could you please give this to the lady sitting up front? It's important." The attendant nodded, sensing the gravity of the gesture and the kindness behind it. A few rows ahead, the woman received the note with a puzzled expression. Her hands slightly trembled as she unfolded the paper. Her curiosity piqued as she read, her expression softened, morphing from defensiveness to introspection. David's words painted a picture of a life dedicated to service, a life not so different from anyone else's in its hopes and challenges. Upon landing, She stood by the gate waiting as passengers streamed past. When David appeared, she stepped forward hesitantly. "Mr. Miller, I read your note," she stammered, looking him in the eye for the first time with genuine openness. "I'm truly sorry for my behavior. Thank you for reminding me that at the end of the day, we're all just people trying to get by." David regarded her with a nod of acknowledgement, his posture relaxed but dignified. "Thank you for your apology," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "It means a lot that you took the time to reconsider your views." They shook hands, an act simple yet profound, observed by a few lingering passengers who offered subtle smiles of approval. The moment was brief but significant, marking a personal transformation for the woman and a reaffirmation for David that patience and compassion could indeed lead to understanding and change. As they parted ways, David felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He walked through the airport exit with a renewed sense of hope, not just for himself, but for the possibility of reconciliation in small, everyday encounters. His note, meant only to address a single act of prejudice, had rippled out to touch more lives, perhaps even changing one. This experience, though unexpected, fortified his belief in the power of dialogue and the human capacity for kindness, a lesson he would carry with him long after the flight was over. From the story of David and the woman on the flight, we learn the profound impact of empathy, communication, and understanding in addressing and resolving conflicts. David's response to prejudice, not with anger but with a thoughtful note, highlights how dignity and dialogue can transform potentially divisive situations into opportunities for growth and reconciliation. This approach not only changed the woman's perspective, but also positively influenced other passengers who witnessed the exchange. This story underscores the idea that while we cannot control the actions of others, we can choose our response. In doing so, we have the power to foster greater tolerance and mutual respect in our communities. It reminds us that every interaction is a chance to either perpetuate division or promote a deeper understanding of our shared humanity.